Oi, oi, it's your boy, Khalil Rountree's Fruit Pastels Jack Slack. It's the Jack Slack podcast. We're coming at you on Monday following UFC 307, and I am, it seems, about to start one of my tri-yearly colds. My voice is struggling already. So we'll see how we go on this, I was about to say on this card, on this episode. But I've got a lot to moan about. I think first off, let's just say what everyone's thinking and what I said before the card. Thank goodness for Alex Pereira. What did we do to deserve this guy? What did the UFC do to deserve this guy, aside from offer more money than glory? My position on the boycast, which I think if you haven't listened to, go back and listen to it because it was a pretty solid, I don't want to say prediction, but read on most of these fights. But I led with the idea that this is a silly main event, but a fun main event, but also a completely undeserved main event, but also a fun main event. And by the end of that episode, I managed to talk myself into some ways that I thought Khalil Rountree could be quite interesting as a matchup. And some of those did appear, and then some of them appeared like at random, and then he didn't go back to them at all. Brackets, the kicking game. And then you got to see Alex Pereira be Alex Pereira in sort of round 3, round 4, put it all together, overwhelm Khalil. I think the really impressive thing is that he was on a 3-week training camp or something for this, and it's come out that he was like, he had Spanish flu or something, and he's coughing in between rounds. This man, I mean, he's stacking up the paychecks because he's, what is he, almost 40? And he's had a ton of fights as a kickboxer before his MMA career. Whoa. Hold up, he's only 37. We got like 8 more years of peak Alex Pereira, in this division at least. When you get too old, go up to heavyweight, because he seems to be the miraculous growing man. Looking at him next to Khalil Rountree, I'm doing the same thing as everyone else. Whenever you see him, you go, how the hell did that guy make middleweight? Or in the words of Rob Whittaker, look at the size of that fella. But then the rest of the card, oh lordy. It was always a brave / stupid / spiteful to your fan base move to have 2 women's bantamweight fights on the main card, on the paid portion of a pay-per-view. Dolidze versus Holland, unfortunate that ended the way it did, but that added into it. And then the other one on the main card was Batista versus Aldo, and the judging left a lot to be desired there, and of course the performance from Batista was not what we're accustomed to from Batista, but we'll get into like the scoring criteria and who's a bitch later on. But main event time, let's talk about it. Before this card, I did a film room episode on YouTube for free. You can go and watch it, 30 minutes long, me examining the men who beat Alex Pereira in kickboxing and some of the interesting things that they brought to the table. And of course, combined with that, the growth of Alex Pereira. You can't do one without the other. Though naturally, people will freak out and go, well, of course he lost. It was 10 years ago. Wah! Like I'm saying, yes, he's still this guy. And Artem Levin would still spank his bum. But go and watch it, because you'll learn some important stuff about Pereira and some stuff that still works against him. You'll also learn a bit about Artem Vakitov, who's on the Contender Series this week, and probably going to lose because the only 2 people I've seen him fight, I can't legally say, for legal reasons, that they were paid to lose, but they fought like they were paid to lose. One dude just pulled him into mount for no reason. It was like watching Mark Coleman retreat back into Takada's guard and being like, no, you have to heel hook me. But anyway, things I thought would be interesting if Khalil Rountree could back into the fence, if Khalil Rountree could use clinch striking, the most explored area of MMA, and a huge part of like traditional Muay Thai, which Alex Pereira didn't have a Muay Thai background. When he fought Simon Marcus, who is very good with knees from the clinch because he does have a strong Muay Thai background, he ended up just putting like one knee up and basically turning his back to Simon Marcus in the clinches, because Simon Marcus couldn't just throw him over for doing that. That was how he defended Marcus's knees. He'd just pick one leg up across his body and like sort of fall over. And I thought, well, it'd be very interesting if someone could use the elbows and knees against him in the clinch. You don't need to take him down. You just need to threaten to take him down so that he presses himself into the fence and then try and strike from there. Unfortunately, none of that from Khalil. The kicking game was always going to be interesting because Khalil Rountree sometimes he spends a load of time in Thailand, but he sometimes comes out as if he wants to be fighting in Lumpini Stadium with a light lead leg like he did against Eric Anders. And then other times he'll come out in like a really squat stance and try and box. But if there's someone you can kick against, It's the guy who has never, well, I think he attempted one takedown against Izzy when they had that weird wrestling fight, but the guy who never attempts takedowns ever. Throw kicks at him. And it's important that you do, because otherwise you end up on the other end of it where you're just, only one of you is throwing kicks. So Alex Pereira was throwing high kicks and hitting him in the arm, hitting him in the head, bruising him up. And Khalil was throwing nothing back. And obviously in the fourth round, Alex Pereira made a big shift and started kicking with the right front kicks to the body. And that just took what was left of Rountree's gas tank away. But when Rountree did kick, it worked well. I really liked the idea of the high kick into the right hook, because if you high kick Pereira on his right side, you take him out of stance a bit, you take him away from that left hook, and getting him away, putting extra inches and seconds onto that left hook is how you beat the left hook, because otherwise you're not going to land any punches. There's always going to be a threat being left hooked, but you've got to try and complicate the path of it. For the most part, however, Khalil's game plan was to back up with his hands high, and then when Pereira bounced a punch off his head, he would run forward with a 2-3-2 or a 2-3 overhand. And it worked okay because he's very, very quick. But it was not a particularly smart game plan. The applause he's getting is more for his heart than for anything clever he did. Though he did do a couple of nice kick catches on the high kick. Must have been about the second round when he caught a high kick and tried to return with kicking out the standing leg immediately. And it was very, very quick. But you just saw how massive Alex Pereira is, because Khalil kicked through and completely missed the leg, and Pereira hadn't even hopped back. One of the things we talked about in the film room was how taller opponents have been less susceptible to Pereira's left hook, because he likes to make a window in front of himself, and as they punch through that and come in, he slides back and left hooks them from the side as they're attacking. And with guys like Yusri Balgawi and Israel Adesanya, when they throw their right straight, he struggles to time his left hook across the top because he's throwing a hooking punch over a straight punch without slipping inside it. So he often ends up on the losing end of it. Indeed, in the Belgawi fights, he basically ends up relying on his right hand in the second and third fights, and has to fight a bit more like a short man. He has to slip inside the jab and throw the right hand across the top and so on. But Khalil's significantly shorter than him, so the left hook was sort of a danger there. But also, Khalil was a southpaw, which can complicate left hooking because you've got the lead hands fighting each other. One of the things that Pereira does against southpaws, which you'll have noticed against Jamal Hill because it was basically the knockout, he likes to pressure them back towards the fence and then get them reaching for his lead hand and then jump in and hook round it. That's how he got Jamal. I thought Khalil did a very good job of staying tight when Pereira tried to put him towards the fence. And ultimately that meant that Pereira's jab started to be more effective for him, and you saw in the last round he's just taken him apart with the jab. But it did mean that when he tried to leap in with the left hook, it just wasn't really finding the mark in the same way. Because when you watch that Jamal Hill fight, you're looking at it going, well, his lead hand should be getting in the way here. And then Pereira does a little jump in, and you realise that there's nothing in front of... there's nothing between Jamal's chin and Pereira's left hand coming in from the outside. So staying tight was a good choice from Khalil there. One of the interesting things that I was talking about in the boycast was, I was saying, just treat it like a Muay Thai match for many reasons. Kick more. When he kicks, just withdraw your lead leg and try and throw back, because when Pereira throws those calf kicks that are almost upwards, they're almost diagonally upwards, and sometimes he hits with like the ball of his ankle, which is crazy. But especially if you watch him against southpaws, when Jiri was southpaw, he does the step up, which is slower, but he always holds his shoulders back, whether he's kicking with his lead leg or his rear leg. Holds his shoulders back and he throws it with his hips alone, which is a very weird look because everyone gets used to looking for the shoulder movement to know when a kick's coming. I'm going to talk about this with my study of Yotin, the Russia Damnern stadium champion at featherweight, I believe, in the coming weeks. But shoulder feints sell kicks as well as they sell punches. Hip feints, if you remember, Machida used to hip feint all the time, and a lot of the time people don't really go for it. It's kind of like if you're fighting someone who's not quite as quick as you and you're showing feints and you're not showing them convincingly enough, or you're not giving the guy time to react, and you're going, oh, I might as well just hit him with the real thing because he's not moving. But even though Pereira holds his shoulders back on those kicks, he still throws his weight into them quite a bit. And when he misses, he ends up way out of position. So I'm waiting for someone to pull their leg back and actually go after him while when he kicks across himself and ends up out of position. It happened a couple of times in this fight. Khalil pulled his leg back or hinged it at the knee and brought his foot back to the other knee like Aldo does to get over calf kicks. And Pereira flew past him with the kick. Way out of position, and Khalil was just so surprised that he didn't do anything. If you're training for Pereira in MMA, I mean, that's like the first layer of his offense is those calf kicks. You've got to be working not just defense, but specific counters. Vakitov's a great guy for counters to Pereira's game. He came in with stuff prepared. If you remember, well, the end of this fight with Khalil covers up, and Pereira goes over his head and catches that crosshand trap. So his left hand goes across and pulls down Khalil's left hand from his guard, and he throws the right hook behind it. Vakitov waited for those against Pereira, and every time Pereira did it, he pulled through 3 punches back and tried to head kick him because Pereira always leaned off to his left when he did that. The guy has habits, that need to be trained for, but everyone's so busy being like terrified and convinced that they're going to get their own game going that these calf kicks especially are just going... It really annoyed me that Jiri didn't do anything about them. He ignored them in the first fight, and then in the second fight, he came in like doing it harder would make a difference. Like if he just believed like an anime character. If he did the Super Saiyan scream thing, he'd be fine. It's like, no, bro, you need to move your legs out of the way. You need to slide your lead foot back and let him kick past you. I loathe to give a positive example of Valentina Shevchenko, but she does this in every one of her fights. She puts her lead leg out there like, oh yeah, that's the one you can hit easily, and then whips it back and does something like a spin kick or a stupid dance in counter to it. But I did like the Pereira would throw the right high kick and then throw that calf kick, almost distracting Khalil with the threat of being knocked out and then going, actually, I just wanted to chip your leg. He's always used the right high kick well to hide his left hook as well. He used to throw right low kick, and then the guy would come back in and he'd throw the left hook, and then they got a bit wise to the fact that he was great at the left hook. So then he'd throw the right high kick, and then the same kickboxers who were too smart to fall for the right low kick and then trying to and getting left hooked on the counter, they would go, oh my God, I can't believe you just tried to kick me in the head, you bastard. And then they'd run at him and he'd left hook them as he was going backwards. I think the bit that everyone enjoyed was Alex Pereira going full Matrix mode at the end, just seeing all the code. He'd slowed Khalil down with those right kicks to the body, but you noticed that Khalil was not sprinting back at him anymore, which is something that strategy of wait and then counter by running on a line at him was never going to hold up over rounds, particularly in Utah, Salt Lake City rather, where you're at elevation. But just generally, it's not a good strategy to just... He's going to come at me and then I'm going to sprint at him and chase him back. Especially when they're taller and longer than you, because you're just going to fall short sooner. But by the 4th round, he was tired, so he was only coming back with one shot at a time, which meant that Alex could jab, pull, and then come back with a counter combination, normally a right straight and a left uppercut. His Hobbit hurter, as I called it, that's his favourite combination for short people, right straight, left uppercut. But I thought he read that beautifully. He was like, he's not going to chase me back now. I can put my lead foot in, jab, go back onto my rear foot, and then stay there and throw afterwards. And he did that like 3 or 4 times in a row. And really, that's how he started to hurt Khalil badly. And then Khalil covered up, and he made a great read of that because you can only do that cross hand trap where you rip down the opponent's left hand with your left hand and throw the right hook. You can only do that when they're covering up. Not just because they need their hands high for you to get to it easily, but because when you put your left hand across to rip their left hand down, you're committing both your hands to one side of their body. If they throw their right hand back, they're going to probably hit you for free. So it only really works against covering opponents. But he immediately recognized that Khalil was not throwing back now. So he went cross trap, right hook, stunned him, went for the finish. Valiant performance by Khalil Rountree. Not a very smart performance. I didn't see a lot of elements there that were like well thought out. He wasn't trying anything except just coming back with punching flurries of not particularly varied combinations. I think the kicking would have really helped him because he threw a couple of left kicks to the body and he got reactions. And I don't know, maybe the reactions spooked him. Maybe he was worried about getting counterpunched on one leg, but he wasn't going to get taken down. I feel like the man loves Muay Thai, but this was the opponent where you could do Muay Thai against them. Because and then, the way that elite Muay Thai fighters deal with elite Muay Thai fighters who have good boxing is to move around the ring, teep them as they come in, intercept them with a knee and clinch them as they come in, elbow them. There's 8 weapons. You don't even need to use 2 of them. You never need to be in boxing range openly, like with no connection to them. You can smother them, you can keep them out of kicking range, and he did neither of those effectively. And of course he didn't wrestle, but no one was expecting him to wrestle. Which is why the fight was booked in the first damn place. I mean, inside me there are 2 wolves. There is the wolf who likes meritocracy and fairness and wants to see the best fighters in the world fight the best fighters in the world. And I go, it's ridiculous that they did this and not the Ankalaev fight. They can move everything else around for everyone else, but they go, oh, Ankalaev had a fight booked. And you're like, Khalil Rountree was on drug suspension when you announced this fight. And then suspiciously that drug suspension was for they announced it was 4.5 months. Oh, good, you've already done it just about. It's like 4.5 months. What a great number. How convenient. If you think that Alex Pereira is the only star they've got going at the moment. I don't know if Sean O'Malley was ever really a star. I think he was just I was constantly being told that he should be the next McGregor, but I don't think anything ever supported that. Alex Pereira consistently saving these pay-per-views for them and knocking people out in impressive fashion has made him a star. And there's not many stars in the UFC right now. They're still harping on about John Jones, and he's fought once in 4 years. That's how desperate they are. They keep trotting out Conor McGregor and promising that he's coming back. And anyone who has an ounce of sense knows that he checked out of the fight game basically after the Mayweather fight. It's been 8 years or something. So they've got this one guy who's propping up a lot of their business. Can you really blame them for trying to let the train ride on a little longer before they throw him in with someone who's actually going to try mixed martial arts against him? And the other wolf inside me is the guy who would promote fights, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm never letting Ankalaev near him. Who's left in the light heavyweight rankings? I'd say, Jamal Hill, he did that yawn thing at the camera that made no sense because it was an exciting fight. But yeah, now they've got beef, and then we got to do the rematch. That, or if things get really slow, I go, what's that? We need to save a fight night card. Johnny Walker has been making a lot of noise about fighting Pereira. I think there's bad blood there between the Brazilians. God, looking at these rankings, this division is just horrible. But I imagine that's what Pereira did when he moved up. He was like, oh, hang on, my life will actually be easier up in weight. But then competent wrestlers above 170 are not easy to find because it's so grueling, and to do it for a full 15-minute fight or 25 minutes, very hard for men of that size. But anyway, rest of this card, trash co-main, watched it on double speed, it was still awful. And then Pennington probably should have won, but the judges did what they were supposed to do and they gave it to Pena because the whole point of this fight was to get the belt on Pena so that people care when Kayla Harrison gets booked against her. You got to have a heel, and Juliana Pena is... I don't think she's even trying. She's just the least likable person in MMA. Every time she speaks, every time she fights, you go, oh my God, she's awful. And then you go, but she did jab up Amanda Nunes so badly that Amanda Nunes had to change stances for the rematch. It wasn't, everyone goes fluke, but she was so scared of the rematch that she had to go southpaw. She didn't even try and fight orthodox. And that's the thing. What if there'd been a third match? I'm on Juliana Pena's side here. What if there'd been a third match and Pena came out southpaw and started doing the dipping jab from southpaw? That's it. Amanda Nunes would be down 2-1 against Pena, and then we would have a new lady goat. But yes, this was arse, as you would expect from a Pennington fight or a Pena fight. You don't want to hear any more about that. It was dreadful. I will say that the Penningtons now, Tisha Pennington Nee Torres and Raquel Pennington, 36 fights in the UFC between them. 5 finishes. Who are they here for? Who's entertained by that? I mean, they seem like nice people, but going back to that wolf who enjoys fight promotion, what are we getting out of this? What are we doing here? And equally shite was Kayla Harrison versus Ketlen Vieira. I did quite like her left kick to the shin, which was taking Caitlin like that. That was basically a snap down. She'd kick her in the shin and Caitlin Vieira would bend in half. She also showed the thing that I was talking about on the Boycast and have talked about previously with Kayla. She's got the Ronda Rousey judo lineage. Not the same because they were very different judoka, but she's got the judo medal. She was expected to be good at fighting because of that, but she went to a proper gym. She went to ATT. Is it ATT? She's with Mike Brown, isn't she? At ATT. She went to a proper gym. She learned to cage wrestle. She learned to level change. She learned to some sort of boxing into her takedown attempts. Ronda could do left hook and grab, and that was it. And she didn't give a shit about learning anything else. She wanted to knock people out and be called like the best women's boxer in the UFC, baby. Kayla Harrison in this fight, I think all her takedowns came off either the cage or a level change. No just grabbing the head and trying to throw her. But the fight was dreadful. It was not a good main card, to be honest. The one that made me sad was Hakeem Buckley versus Stephen Thompson, because on the Boycast I was talking about I've seen Hakeem Buckley running in on a straight line an awful lot. If you watched his fight with Imavov, he just did it over and over again. And I was like, well, Stephen Thompson used to have very good ring craft, forgetting that he doesn't anymore. Like, that's how Gilbert Burns and Bilal Muhammad and Shavkat all just pushed him to the fence easily. This man does not have the urgency or the legs anymore. The legs are famously one of the first things to go in a boxer. Anyone who's heavy on the movement, they lose that quickly. But what you saw in this one was like Stephen Thompson does these little pull counters or sliding back counters, open side counters. Buckley would start running in with a combination. Stephen Thompson would slide back and throw the right hand. And he never has huge power. He was never a huge hitter. He does have great accuracy, and then he would get the hell out of dodge immediately after landing one of those. If you watch his fights with Johnny Hendricks, Rory McDonald, guys who just wanted to push him to the fence and get him down. He was amazing at getting out the side door before they even came close to the side of the cage. This fight, he goes back behind the black line of the octagon. This is the first exchange, I think. Goes back behind the black line of that interior octagon, then throws the counter, and then is standing there and just gets pushed into the fence. And that happened like 24 times in this fight. He slides back, he throws the counter, he hits Buckley on the chin, and then Buckley just crashes chest first into him and pushes him into the cage. And then the final exchange of the fight was Stephen Thompson going backwards, landing that right hand again on the jaw, or left hand, can't remember which stance he was in, but the same sliding back counter, standing there, trying to pick up his leg to like use it as a shield against Buckley as he charged in, and getting hit on one leg along the fence. But it was that constant like throwing the counter. He's still got the eye, he's still got the accuracy and the timing. He's just standing there looking at his work. He doesn't have what it takes to get out of the way again afterwards. So it was very sad, but it was a good knockout by Buckley, and he performed decently. He did exactly what he had to do, but I've seen like 4 guys in a row do that to Thompson now, just push him to the fence, and whether they knocked him out or whether they just held him against the fence or whether they pulled him down onto the mat, same shit, different day. Dude's legs are not there anymore, which is probably why he's trying to rely more on sitting down and just countering. But that was never really his strength. Thumping people. Roman Dolidze versus Kevin Holland was, they're both kind of meme fighters, so it's kind of fitting that we got a meme result. Roman Dolidze gets his takedown. Kevin Holland holds guard with the body triangle for a while, the figure 4 of the legs. Can't remember who it was on Twitter. Someone who likes grappling said, the moment you see that, you know that they ain't trying shit, which is true. Like, it's what Anderson Silva used to do to try and get stand-ups. He did once pull his own foot inside the guy's thigh and use it as like a butterfly sweep, but I could also see you like blowing out your own knee doing that or calf slicing yourself somehow. That was real like regional scene Anderson Silva. That should have been Musasi's nickname, regional scene Anderson Silva. Or MVP's until he turned up and embarrassed Kevin Holland. But yeah, Kevin Holland starts inverting himself to swing around for an armbar. Well, he does have a good armbar, actually. He has the Charles Oliveira style armbar, where you reach under the leg and anchor yourself, pull yourself up onto your shoulders, and you throw the armbar with the expectation that something happens. I say it every time, but Charles Oliveira tries, quote unquote, tries the armbar in every fight. He attacks with the armbar in every fight. He has finished one armbar ever, and that was a triangle armbar, so it wasn't even the same kind of armbar that he always does. But what he does do is like he throws the armbar, comes back on the triangle, throws the armbar, rolls over his shoulder onto his knees and runs up, which is what Kevin Holland does a lot. So it's a good way to get stuff going. But he blew out his rib doing it, which is unfortunate. That can happen. I mean, the example people always give is BJ Penn taking Matt Hughes' back, but Matt Hughes had like elbowed him in the body 5 times before that from closed guard. And BJ Penn fans used to love just making up excuses or making up ways that BJ somehow beat himself instead of the guy who game planned for him quite well and beat him up. But yeah, Roman Dolidze got given his black belt off this. Hilarious. Batista versus Aldo. Can't help but apologise, lads. Because I said this would be great fun. But I also pretty much called it on the podcast. Because I said my issue with Aldo is that he can defend takedowns beautifully. He's always used the fence to prop him up when he's defending takedowns. And he's kind of a rarity in that the fence is where people want to initiate their takedowns now. And Aldo's still untakedownable along it. The issue is that if you hold him there and you're like, I really want to take you down, mate, but you don't try, he'll still be there going, oh, he might try and take me down in a minute. Or I think I said it at the end of that podcast. He thinks the fence is a neutral position because he's not getting hurt and he's not getting taken down. And ultimately, if the opponent's trying to take him down and he's stuffing them, he's doing the effective work. But that's not how judges see it. Now, we can complain about the judging criteria all day, but if you've watched 100 fights, you know this is what they do. He's been in fights where this is what happens. He lost the last round against Volkanovski just being held against the fence. He lost the last round against Merab just being held against the fence. Stopped 16 out of 16 takedowns against Merab. Didn't get any points for defending them. So he knows. He knows he needs to get off. And I did like that at a certain point in round one, like he let him hold him all of round one. And then he finally went, actually, I can see what he's trying to do here. And he started trying to get off. And then the moment he came out for round 2, he goes, right knee, straight up, as soon as Batista stepped in. And he said, try it again, you're getting that, mate. And then every time Batista stepped in after that, it was like, here's the knee, which is real throwback Aldo. Aldo, he threw those knees when he couldn't box. His boxing used to be trash. He used to just flap his arms around. That's how long ago he was throwing those knees. He won the WEC title with those knees. And then he's just brought them back in recent years. It used to be like an occasional thing he'd do, like the low kicks. But against Martinez, he was throwing them all the time. Against Munoz, he was throwing them a lot. It's great to have them back. And the great thing is, like, he throws them and then Batista would go, oh my God, and catch his leg. And Aldo's fine with that because he can defend a single better than anyone in the world, pretty much, in an MMA context. But he did keep getting pressed to the fence. And I liked what Batista was doing on the feet. I thought he'd get picked apart a lot more than he did. Because I thought, like, he's a bit more... I didn't think he was as finesseful. Finesseful? I didn't think he's as polished as Jonathan Martinez. But he throws an awful lot more than Jonathan Martinez, and he's a lot gamer than Jonathan Martinez. He didn't seem to mind that much about getting countered. He'd get lanced with those jabs. Aldo's jab was looking like the George Foreman one, the one they used to call the telephone pole, because it was like you were talking to someone and then walked into a telephone pole. His jab was moving Batista back, his head. You were counting the symptoms of CTE he was going to enjoy in later life. Oh, there goes your favourite colour. Oh, wife's birthday. But Batista did strike back gamely, and that was how he got into his clinches along the fence. The downside was that then he did just hold, and he was kneeing. I mean, but Aldo did some good work off the overhook. If you saw, he'd get the overhook, and then he'd get the thumb post on the bicep on the other side. He'd turn into Batista, slide that thumb posting hand across the neck, and then start walking out backwards. So he'd use that whizzer to throw Batista by him. But it would take him time to do. Like, he couldn't just get off the fence, which... Again, this is the crux of why, or how the MMA meta, if you want, but how MMA is right now, the snapshot is, it's been a arms race between cage wrestling up and cage wrestling down, and we're now at the point where the man on the cage is always going to be at the disadvantage because you can always get back up, but getting away is the hard part. And if someone as good as Jose Aldo can't just get away, it takes him time to get away, and he's losing the round on knees to the thigh or some shit, yeah, that's where we are. It's difficult because Jose Aldo is like the best, and he's struggling with it. Which again, Aldo doesn't really do whizzer throws off the cage, but if you watch the guys who really know about cage wrestling from training in those cage wrestling camps, people like Islam Makhachev. You watch Islam Makhachev get off the fence, it's not like he just occasionally tries that big throw. That big throw is his way to get off the fence. If they're not giving him anything, he just goes, right, throw. Oh, it failed. No worries. We're out in the middle of the cage again. Alice Gerov did it to Hamzat in their fight. He got knocked out shortly after by an uppercut, but if you go watch that fight, he got off the cage against Hamzat by threatening to throw him. And Hamzat having to belly out. I think everyone in MMA right now needs to go and find a judo coach and say, teach me to do Haragoshi with the whizzer, because that's all that matters when my back's to the cage anymore. So Aldo looked great. I think he was also affected by the fact that he took another fight in Salt Lake City, and you're going, why are you taking these fights in Salt Lake City? One of the upsides of the Salt Lake City fights, because Aldo's gas tank has always been like his limiter. He always held back in his fights because he was worried about gassing. And in Salt Lake City, he's just not looked great in the third round either time. Actually, I will say that Alex Pereira, he looked tired in that fourth round. He was moving forward with his mouth open, going after Khalil Rountree. And I thought that was really quite impressive to be like, I'm tired, but he's tired. I'm getting this done. But anyway, the nice thing about Aldo fighting in Salt Lake City is that they released the purses. So we found out last time against Merab, he made $400,000 for losing. I don't think he might be one of the very few fighters on the UFC roster who their pay is heavily weighted towards show money and not win money. I think Gaethje's like that. Overeem used to be like that. You've got to have some real name value to be able to pull that off. But ultimately, it's how it should work for everyone. You know, the idea that the best fighters in the world won't try if you don't like make it so they lose half their purse if they lose is insane. But it's penny pinching because that's what the UFC loves. So the actual judges were all over the place on this card. There were like 30-27s in the wrong direction and all sorts. It's one of those cards. Now everyone's talking about the judging criteria, what it's supposed to be, what it's meant to be, how it should be. And it's just, at the end of the day, it's subjective. It is like there are guys who go through these fights in the aftermath, rating the strikes light, medium, and heavy, reading out the scoring criteria. It is subjective. There's just three people watching a fight and they are judging it as it happens. And some of them are corrupt and some of them are incompetent, but you will never get that subjective element out. Anytime you try and do it with AI or some shit, there's always going to be holes. You're going to find out that AI scores like the rabbit kick from Taekwondo that was only around for like a year. They worked out that you could score kicks by healing the opponent in the kidney from the clinch. So you just had these guys standing in front of each other, hopping up and trying to heal each other in the kidney. The scoring is always going to be flawed. It's very funny when Carla Esparza, shout out Carla Esparza retiring on this card, the first thing she said in her post-fight interview was, don't leave it in the hands of the judges. And you're like, Carla, you got 2 finishes in 16 UFC fights. But very funny nonetheless. Shout out Carla Esparza. It was not a great fight. I like that she went forward and tried to strike at the end. She's not been the best for a long time. She was a very one-dimensional fighter after Yun Jacek came along and beat her for the title. And she somehow stuck around and then fought her way back to the title. And Rose Namajunas was so spooked by their first fight that even though she was a completely different fighter by that point, she wouldn't get anything going. It's sort of an embarrassing moment for the UFC, so they're never going to shine a light on it, but she got back and won the title again after like 5 years. That's crazy. And that's in the good women's division. Anything else good on this card? Oh, the insane reffing in Ihor Potieria versus Cesar Almeida. This was really sad because Cesar Almeida did look good, but he was also deliberately strumming this dude's face like a guitar. Anytime they came close, like one of these ones, Cesar Almeida puts his hand on the guy's face in close, rakes it to the side and throws it out to the side like he's just done a cut with a samurai sword and he's about to put it back in its scabbard or whatever it's called. Sheath? Weebs, tell me the Japanese word for it in the comments. I liked Almeida's guillotine, roll through to mount. I liked Almeida's striking. I liked Almeida's body shots. Clearly been working with Pereira, the body jab, the right straight to the body. But man, the ref was not... I mean, he must have had money on the other guy because he was not listening to Hijo Pereira. Now, I get that you're not... The fighter's not supposed to call the fouls. And if he's... you're supposed to go on what you see and not what the fighter says. But equally, if the fighter's told you twice that they've been poked in the eye, you should probably be looking to see if they get poked in the eye next time. And then this dude, every time that because Pereira is losing on the feet and he's getting eye poked. So he starts pushing the guy to the fence and he gets clinches. And this ref's breaking them up after like 20 seconds, which is insane. I mean, obviously we all immediately changed our opinions when Batista started doing it to Jose Aldo. But this is a sport that involves grappling, and grappling takes time to play out. It's not shoot boxing. It's not like you get 10 seconds to do grappling on the feet or whatever, or karate combat with their ridiculous ground and pound rule. Truly bizarre. Hope we never see that referee again. Your Pereira is now like 1-4 in the UFC, but I think it would be very harsh to cut him off this one because he was absolutely up against it, not just in Cesar Almeida being a good fighter, but also the ref trying to help. Meanwhile, Cesar Almeida looked pretty good, given how bad he looked in his last one against Kopylov. Spann versus Ovinson Prue, bonk. That's all you need to know about that one. I enjoyed Court McGee versus Tim Means. Court McGee boxed just long enough to get Tim Means convinced that they were in like a striking match. And then he grabbed the collar tie and turned him around onto the cage, got his takedown, got the back, hit the neck crank. Lovely work. And that was about it. That was everything from that card that I cared about, and more, because I talked about the co-main event as well. We got a weird one coming up this weekend. Tyra versus Royval, that's a banger. Brad Tavares versus Junyon Park, the Iron Turtle in the co-main. Weird, but I'll take it. Grant Dawson's back. D-Rod versus Morono. That feels like a fight that's happened 10 times, but probably hasn't happened once yet. Abdul Razak Al Hassan is either going to head kick someone in 10 seconds or get head kicked in 10 seconds. Chidian Jokani is going to hopefully bring back those clinch knees. He's got some of the best clinch knees in the game, I think. You got JSP versus Pat Sabatini. That's actually a really good fight. Nico Price is going to get laid out in strange new ways. And Chris Barnett's fighting one of the Taffers. Could change. Could be the other Taffer at last minute. But as heavyweight fights go, that's fine. I'm your boy Jack Slack. Sign up to the Patreon if you want to get in on the extra stuff I do every week, including the yachting study that's coming up. Or find out what yachting is even. It's a type of yogurt. Your wife drinks it for her tummy. If you want to send an email to the podcast, jackslackpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to see what I'm writing anytime, fightprimer.com. Subscribe to the YouTube because I'm doing YouTubes now and the YouTube shorts. And join me on Instagram where I'm washing away the taste of Twitter. I'm your boy Jack Slack. Making Ankalaev take 3 more fights to earn his shot at Pereira. Bless.